Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in this video what we are going to build is a Kanban board using dnd-kit where we can add containers, add items, and we can drag between those containers and we can sort those items in those containers. So this is how the experience is going to be looking like, and we can also add one more container just to see. Let's add a container called review. We can add one more item. Let's call it to do 6, and then we can drag those here. We can also drag our container here. Yep, and that's what we're going to build today. Let's do it. Okay, so let's jump into the code. So I already have a Next.js starter with Tailwind CSS, and also have pre-made components like button container inputs that we are going to use in the app. Let's go to index.js. I've already imported those, so we don't have to do it again. And I have a basic app setup which just has a title called dnd-kit. Let's see that. Okay, so now let's do the first thing. The thing that we're going to do is install dnd-kit. Let's head over to their website and copy the npm install it, and there we go. We have dnd-kit inside our app. Let's create some states that we're going to use all over the app. So first thing that we need is a containers state. Set those containers and use state and assign it to an array. And let's define a type for that particular state. And we need an ID which is going to be a unique identifier. So unique identifier is a type which is given by dnd-kit. This is used to identify a particular element by dnd. So that's what we need there. And then we need a title string, and then we need items, and it's gonna be in the array, and again we need the id for those and title. So these two ids should be unique. I'll be explaining those later down the road when we get to handling those dragging, but yeah, we need to have these two ids which should be uniquely identified. Then let's create another state. We're going to call it active id and set active id. Again, this needs to be a unique identifier, and it can also be null. So initially it should be null. And then another state is current container ID, which means like this will be used for basically models, but I'm defining it right now so that we don't have to do it after later. So unique identifier, and again we need container name. Set container name, use state item. These states will be used basically for a model where we will use it as the input to create new items and new containers. So I'm just doing it right now and creating all those states that we need. And another thing that we need is show add container modal. Yep. Uh, show add item modal. Yep. So these are the old states that we need. Okay, so let's get started with our actual implementation now. And I already have this div element which is margin top 10. So that means it is living somewhere around here. And I already have grid with a column 3 and gap 6. So under that, we are going to add dnd context. That's where the initial point starts for dragging. And dnd context needs some things which are sensors. So to do that, we need to let's create sensors here, and we call it dnd handlers, and let's call it sensors. And we are going to use sensors hook given by dnd, and use sensor, we're going to use pointer sensor. And we sensor basically the inputs that dnd, I mean this dnd-kit can take basically pointer like mouse events and keyboard events like use sensor, keyboard sensor, and we need to give it a coordinate getter sortable keyboard coordinates. And let's pass those sensors to our dnd context. And then we also need to give it a collision detection. So we'll use closest corners. If you have worked with 2D games, you might know how the collision detection works basically. So closest corner is a type of collision detection method. And then we go to on drag start, and we call it handle drag start. We haven't declared those functions yet, but we'll do it on drag move, and we're going to call it handle drag move. And on drag end, we're going to call it handle drag end. Let's define those functions here. Const handle drag start, so which is gonna give me active. So let's not use this, let's use the event, and we're gonna call it drag start event. And then const handle drag move, again an event. It's gonna be drag move event, and const handle drag end. We're gonna call it event drag end event. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is basically add a sortable context, which is going to help us in doing the sorting. And then it needs something called items, which is going to keep, this is going to keep track of our items. Containers dot map, it needs unique identifier, so we are going to do container, and gonna do container dot id basically. So type children is missing in items any but required in type props. So yeah, we haven't provided dnd type to this. That's why. Okay, children is missing still. Oh, yeah, children sortable context needs some children, so I'm going to provide it. So we are going to do containers.map here. So we're going to map all our containers here, and we are going to call it container. And we are now going to use our container component. I'll go over to that container component in a bit, but let's do the things that we need to do right now. Container.id, and let's head over to container component. Let's expand it a bit. So what container component takes in is basically id, children, title, description, and a function on add item, which we're going to add later. So we are going to use sortable, which is a hook provided by dnd-kit, so that we can use it as a sortable item, and we need to give it id. Use sortable item means that we can drag it, and it gives us the ability to add attributes, set the node ref that we need to add the reference for that particular element. Listeners is what we are going to use to listen to the drag events. That means this drag handle is gonna we are going to give pass on those as prop to the button. And transform give us the basically the css classes, and transition also gives us a css classes, and it also gives a boolean called is dragging, so that we can do some neat stuff there. So basically what we're going to do is pass on those attributes to the div, set the reference to set node ref, and we are going to open a style object and pass in the transition that we're getting from use sortable. And then we are going to pass on the transform, and we are going to use css, which is also provided by dnd-kit utilities. So we're going to use css.translate or toString transform. So we're going to pass, so this is the basically the transform x and y, which is the coordinates which are given by use sortable hook. And then I am using CLSX for handling my class names. So we have a width full, height full, padding, and the background gray. And when we are dragging, we are just making it opacity 50. And then we have this title description. We can also add description to it. Basically, I was just showing up title, so I'm not sure we need this. Let's remove it here. And then we have a button, drag handle. So this the listeners are given to this button so that we can click on it and drag it around. Right now there's nothing there, we can't see it, but once we add it, then we'll be able to see it. And then the children's, that means the items, and at last we have a button called add item, so which is sort of variant of ghost. And then when we click on it, you can replace this button with any of your custom components. Basically, this is what I'm using right now. It's from shadcn. So yep, so let's get back to the code, and we are going to give the title to container dot title. And what else it needs is basically a key that is already given, sorry, container dot id. And on add item, right now that function is not defined, so I'm just gonna give it a void expression expected. Oh, sorry, I'm missing an arrow function here. Okay, so now what we need is another sortable context for our internal items, and we are going to do this, and it needs children, and we are going to map our containers items in here, and then we are going to import our items and give it a key item.id. And id also we need to give, because it is also a type of sortable which is using use sortable hook. I'll go over it after I'm done with this one. So we have this, and what we need is basically a flex items start, and we're gonna call it flex call, and we're gonna give the gap to be by 4. Right now we can't see anything because we don't have anything on the containers state. But yeah, let's go over to the items component. Let's go over it. So it takes in id and title, and it is again a type of use sortable because we want to drag it around, and it takes an id, and I'm just giving extra data of type item so that it can differentiate what is a type container here and what is a type item here. So it takes in again a ref, all those attributes, styles, and this again, if it is dragging, make the opacity 50, and then again title, and again we have a drag handle which takes in listeners. Okay, great. Now the actual fun stuff start, which is handle drag start. Okay, so in handle drag start, what we are going to use is basically we are going to get the active from our event, and we are going to get the ID from that particular active. That means we want the active ID, and we're going to set the active ID to be ID. So why do we need this is basically to render drag overlays. So I'll explain once we get to it at the end, where when we drag over something, we want to use that ID to get the right content of that particular dragging item. Yep. So this is it for the handle drag start. Okay, so now let's start implementing handle drag move. In here, what we need is basically active and over from event. So this is the active element and the over element, and then we're gonna have multiple scenarios. So let's handle the items sorting first. That means we are dragging an item over an item in a same container or in a different container. So to do that, we're going to have an if condition in which if the active.id .toString.includes item, that means it is an item that we are dragging, and same goes for over.id .toString.includes an item. And we're also going to make sure we have active and over, and we're not dragging over the same thing. That means active.id is not equals to over.id. Cool. Now the next thing is to find the active container and over container. So to do that, we're gonna do const active container is equals to find value of items. So I have a helper function which is called find value of items. So it takes in the ID and it takes in the type that you're giving it. So if you're giving the container ID, it finds in the container itself. If you're giving the item type, that means we have given the item ID. So I want the container which contains that particular items or item. So what we're gonna do is basically give it as we have already checked this is item, so we know it is gonna be item, so we're gonna give it item, and same goes for over container find value of items over.id, and we give it item. So now we have active container and over container. We're also gonna make sure that if the active or over container is undefined, we're gonna return. So that means this item's active container and over container does not exist, so we're gonna just return this function. And then what we're gonna do is find the active and over container basically. So to do that, we need the index to be specific. Active container index, and we need to find it in containers, find index, and same goes for over container. And then after that, we need to find the index of the active and over item, the actual items. So const active item index is gonna be active containers dot item dot find index, where we need this item, and same goes for over item index. So now we have all the things that we need. So we're gonna check if that means in the same container, if you're dragging in the same container, what we're gonna do is basically if active container is equals to sorry, not active container, active container index is equals to over container index, then we're gonna do let new items is equals to triple of all the containers. So we're gonna just expand that array, and we are going to do is new items active container index dot items is equals to array move is a function which is given by dnd-kit, which is very easy to move items between the arrays basically. So new items active container dot items, and we want to move the item at active index to the over item index. And at the end, once we are done with this, we are going to set container to be a new items. Okay, so for else, that means we are in a different container. So we're going to do the same thing. We are going to copy our array containers, and then what we are going to do is find the removed item from new items active container index, which is an active container right now, dot items dot splice active item index and 1. Then what we're going to do is new items over container index dot items dot splice over item index 0 moved item, and we're going to set the container. So we're going to just move the items from one container to another container using splice, and I think that's good. Then what we are going to do is another condition that we need to handle. So let's see where the surface close here. So handling item drop into a container. So now the item is dragged over a container instead of another item. So we need to handle that in a different manner. So what we're going to do is active.id, same thing, toString.includes item and over.id.toString.includes container and check if active exists. Check if over exists and active.id is not the same with the over.id. That means we're good to perform this check. Now we're going to do the same thing, find the active and over container. So yep, we're going to use the find value of items again, but in the over container you notice we are passing container right now because we are taking over id is supposed to be a container id. Again, same check, if the active is undefined we're going to just return it. And let's add some comments just for the readability. Find the index of the active and over container. Because we are just moving the active item from one place to another. So now let's add the comment, remove the active item from the active container and add it to the over container. Exactly what we're gonna do now. Let new items, make a copy of containers and const remove item dot splice active item index 1, and then we are going to do new items dot push. I'm going to push it to the over container index and set containers to be new items. Great. Now let's see, actually already added this dummy content so that we can see how functionality works in the handle drag move. Okay, so now let's see what we have invented is working. So we can drag items here, but we cannot drag our containers. And this thing we are going to handle that in handle drag end. So let's do that. So now let's implement handle drag end. It is going to be a little bit or like 70% similar to handle drag move, but in this we are going to handle one more condition, which is handle dragging containers, like container sorting basically. So let's do the same thing. We get the active and over from event, and we are going to first handle container sorting. So again we are going to do the check if active.id toString includes this. Again it includes container, active is there, over is there, and they are not equal. Great. For this condition what we need is the active container index, because we already know these are containers. So we're going to do containers.find index container.id, and same for over container index and find the container id. Now we're gonna do is to swap the active and over container. So let new items gonna be the containers. We're just gonna swap the positions. So new items active container index. I want to do this. Let's use array move. New items is equals to array move, and we're gonna give it new item and new items active container index and over container index, and let's set containers to be new items. Great. I think we will be able to sort this. Great. Now the sorting is working for containers. And now let's do the similar thing that we did in the handle drag move, is handle item sorting. You can go ahead and copy paste this, but I think it's better just for our solid understanding. Let's implement it again. Includes item. Now this, so we have this similar thing. and we are going to find the active container and or container, this and this, because we already know these are items. Then we're gonna do the similar check and find the active and over container index, container.find index, active container ID, and const over container index, containers.find index, this, and again find the index of the active and over item. It's very much similar to what we did in handle drag move. We're doing it again just for this function to be sure about for dnd-kit, where if we end the dragging, we are moving the item to the correct place where it should be. Same in the, now we're going to do in the same container. So if active container index is equals to over container index, so we're going to do let new items, copy this, new items, active container index dot items, array move new items dot items, active item index and over item index. And then at the end, once we are happy with the result, we are going to set containers to be new items. Cool. Else we are in different containers. What we are going to do there is the same thing that we did earlier. Make the new items copy, remove items, and we're gonna splice it, find the removed item, and then new item dot new over container index splice, it's 0 removed item, and then we are going to set the containers to be new items. Great. Now let's see where it closes here. And now the last thing that we need is handle item drop into a container. Similar thing, let's do it again. If active dot id dot toString includes this, we are going to do that, and we are going to find the active container and the over container. We are going to return if it is not present, and then same thing, find the active container index, over container index, and we are good to go with this thing. Find the index of the active item and find the index of the we do not have over, so yeah, my bad there. And then what we're gonna do is let new items is gonna be containers const removed item is gonna be new items, active container index item dot splice. Yep, we don't want to do active item index and 1, and then we are going to add that to our over container index, and then our set containers new items, and we want to just at the end set the active ID to be null, because we are done with the dragging. Okay, nice. And we are good with all the functions that we need. Great. Now we can drag it in and around, but yeah, this function doesn't work, and we want to also have a function which is going to be called add container, so that we can add multiple containers and add items as well. So let's do that. Now let's add our modals. So what we're going to do is add some comment here. So add container modal. So I already have a predefined component which can handle all of this. So we're going to do is show modal and give it the previous state that we defined. Now we're going to use those states. So show add container modal and set show add container modal. And we are going to do div class name flex column with full item start, and we're gonna give the gap to be 4, and yep, that's what I want. Text the Excel font bold. Great. And also we're gonna use the input component that we already have. We're gonna give it a type of text. Placeholder is gonna be container title. Name is gonna be container name, and we are going to give it a value of container name. And on change is what we're gonna do is set the container name to be the value. Button on click, and then we have on add container, which we haven't defined yet. We're gonna do it in a bit once we are good with this. Add container, and let's add at the end a button to add the container. Button add container. Let's give it some props that we need. Is on click, handle show. What we're gonna do is set show add container model to be true. Okay, now what we are going to do is define on add container. Let's define it above our dnd handlers here. So const on add container, and we are going to do this. If not container name, we're gonna return. That means we don't have a name. Why we should create a container then? Container UUID, we create the ID from UUID. I set containers to be our previous containers, and we are going to give it ID. Title is going to be container name, and item says empty. And we are good with this. It should hopefully work. And we are going to give this test container and add container. Yep. So once we are now, right now it's not closing. So once we are done with that, what we need is, let's go back to on add container here. We want to set the container name to be empty and set show add container model to be false. Let's try it again. Yep, test container again. Yep, we're good. And this is empty now. Cool, let's reload so it goes away. Great. The next modal that we need to add is for items. Okay, so let's do that. Again, we're gonna call it add item modal, and we're gonna go modal show modal this thing, same state that we defined earlier, and need some children. And we're gonna have the same styling, of course, because it's the same thing. Add item, and just the input is gonna be different. So type item name, and value is gonna be what we defined. Is it item name? Yeah, this is item name. On change, set item name to be e.target value, and take the e from here. And on add item, so we haven't defined it. Let's go back to the place where we defined on add container. We're just gonna do const on add item, and what we are going to do is basically check the same thing. If not item name, we're gonna return. That means we don't have an item. We're gonna do const id, which is gonna be item UUID, and we are going to find the container. So how we're gonna do this is containers dot find item dot id is equals to current container ID. Okay, and if not container, we're gonna return container dot item dot push this, push ID and title, and then we're gonna do set containers, set containers to be containers, set item names to be empty, and set show add item model to be. But we don't know right now what is current container ID, so we need to find it when we are clicking on add item. So here, So what we're doing is show add item model true and set current container id to be container.id. So this should hopefully work. Let's add a to do third one. I guess this is 3. Cool, we can drag it around. That's nice. So we have both our add container and add item working. Let's work on the next step, which is the drag overlay. Okay, so now let's implement drag overlay. So what drag overlay is basically a preview when you drag something. For example, right now we're dragging an element and we can't see the preview of it. We can just see the item just going there like a ghost, and we can't see the preview of it. So that's what drag overlay does for us. So let's implement that. So it's a React component given by dnd. So we just add a drag overlay, and we are going to render that when we have active id, and we are also going to check if the active id.toString includes. Let's do it for items first. So item, if that's the case, we are going to render item. Let's see how it looks right now. So when you drag, you can see this preview, but we don't want this item. We want to render the actual item here. So how we're gonna do this is basically we just use the same component that we have, items. We're gonna give it the id, active id, and it needs a title. We're gonna give it title item, but no, that's not right. We should create a function which should give me the exact title of that particular item. So let's, for that particular item id, based on a particular item id, let's do find item title, and we take in the id, and what we're going to do is find the container and just find the title. So that means we find the container first. If not container, we return, and then we find the items on that container, and if we get the item, we just return the title. Great. So to do that, we are going to render something like find item title, and we give it active id. So that means it cannot be undefined. Yep. So we should return, instead of returning nothing, we should return empty string. Yep, so that we don't break our previous component that we have. Great. As you can see the preview now, whenever you're dragging something in and around. Let's add new item. Let's see if it works. Great. So we can see the preview, and we want to do the same thing for our container. Yeah, so we have this container, but we want to create a function for that. Let's go up again, we create same thing, and we just find the container and return the title. That's great. And children's are missing. Great. It needs children, so we want to find the children which that particular container contains right now. So how we're gonna do this is, we don't need this. We should create one more function which is gonna be called find container items. Here, const find container items, take in the id, and we should return the containers item. And let's render those out here. Find container items, active id, and we render out the items here. Remove this, and we are good to go with all of this thing that we've done right now. We can drag the container, and it is dragging with the preview with the items that it holds. Awesome. Let's add one more called review, and let's add one more item called item new item, or do something, and we drag it around here like this. Great. So that is it. Let me know what you guys think about this video, and if you guys liked it, please Do subscribe, like, share, comment, and if you have any question regarding the code or anything, just let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.